Hi guys, if you're new here, welcome, and please note that none of my videos are legal advice. They are specifically for purposes of sharing information. With that said, let's speak about the practical steps to administering a deceased estate. So the first thing that actually happens is that a person who a person has to go and identify the body of the deceased person and then report the death to Home Affairs and ensuring that you're actually going to get a death certificate. And then if then there's my system, and then if there is the last will, you need to locate it and notify the executor of the death. Those are the first three things you do before like the funeral and all of that. And then in registering the deceased estate itself with the master's office, you first need to establish how much assets does the person have. Are they above 250,000 or are they below? That will determine what type of letter do you register. All right, and then the first step that the executor will take is to notify the master of the death in terms of the J94 death notice. And then this notice is not necessarily completed by the deceased, by the executor, but it's completed by the person who actually identified the body, or the closest relative or spouse, blood relatives or spouse. And ideally this is done within 14 days of the said deceased passing, but obviously that doesn't happen, and this is done within the jurisdiction of the where the spouse, not the spouse, but where the deceased has been living in the past 12 months. And then if the person was not living in South Africa but they have assets in South Africa that require administrating, you can register it anywhere in the country, any master's office in the country. And then the next requirement that the executor has is to hold a preliminary meeting to speak on the validity of the will, and then if it is valid, determine all of the beneficiaries and the heirs, and prepare an inventory that they will report to the master's office of all the liabilities and assets of the deceased. And then this so-called inventory is accompanied by the actual application of the letters of executorship or the letters of authority, whichever one that they're applying for. And the master will then confirm that they are satisfied with the will being valid, and then the person who's nominated as an executor is a fit and proper person to stand the duty, not fit and proper, but fit to stay for the duty. And then they are appointed and they as an executor dative, and then the estate is wound up. And then if it's invalid, then you appoint an the master appoints the executor dative, and the estate is wound up interstate. So ensure that you have a valid will, guys. Like, make sure that you meet all the requirements as stated by section 2 of the Wills Act. The previous video that's on this page speaks on the requirements for a valid will. And then after having had that particular letters of executorship or authority, if cash of the deceased is more than 1,000 rand, you have to open an estate late account in the name of the deceased. So that account is in the name of the deceased, but it's called an estate late account. There are certain banks that do that, so do your research on that or consult an attorney who will let you know. I do have these things written. And then there are requirements that follow, which are the requirements of advertising to creditors in terms of section 29 of the act. And once the advertising is done and no one is claiming, or people are bringing in money, and then you've wound up all of this, the estate needs to be completed. Ideally, generally, it needs to be completed within 6 months, but that's not usually the case because things delay, and the executor constantly has to go back to the master and explain why they still need an extension for the estate to be complete, because maybe policies haven't paid up or certain things haven't been finalized, because things just don't work in South Africa. They are ideal on paper, but they just don't work. And then once that's completed, the executor then completes a list of liabilities and assets of the estate in form of an LND, the liquidation and distribution account. And this is lodged with the master, and it sits for inspection for a few days. And your attorney will explain, if you are consulting, will explain the number of days that it sits for the inspection, and for master to actually raise any queries. And if there are no queries, then the master gives permission to advertise. And once advertising, the second advertising of the L&D is done in terms of section 35 of the act. And then the L&D lies for inspection for the public for a certain period of time again. And then once that's done and there are no objections, it doesn't sit at the master's office, it sits at the magistrate's court. Once it's done, the executor now has a duty to distribute all of the funds that are in the estate, or all of the assets. And usually an executor is entitled to 3.5% of the total value of the estate, and then 6% of any income that is made from the estate. And once they've paid that estate duties, then the rest is then distributed to the heirs and beneficiaries of the estate. And then once all of this is done, the executor will then apply to the master to discharge of all of their responsibility. And if the master is satisfied that they've actually done all that was needed to be done, they issue a filing slip and they discharge certificate. That's how the process is done. That's why it takes so long. I hope this explains it. And it doesn't take 6 months because of how our administrative things are in South Africa, of how certain things just delay for no reason in South Africa. You get to places and things just don't work, and people sometimes don't know that they needed to go to an executor, and they actually go to consult regarding the administration of the estate later, and then again the executor will have to explain what is it. Anyways, I hope this explains the whole process, and yeah, good luck if you are actually in the process of administrating your estate, or if you're a candidate attorney and just needed a reminder of how actually this is done. I hope this was helpful, and good luck. Bye.